Dobry večer vsi, good evening or good afternoon, depending on where we all are. My name is Lysa Skiba. I am the National Fundraising Manager for the Ukrainian Canadian Congress. I'm very pleased to welcome all of you today. I'd like to start with a little bit of housekeeping. So if I could ask everyone to stay on mute during the presentation. If you have questions during the presentation, please jot them down and then have them ready to share during the question and answer session. This session, as you know, will be recorded today and we will have it available on our UCC YouTube. I'm just going to check the Dobre waiting room. It is my pleasure to introduce Dr. Sonia Udod, Associate Professor at the College of Nursing at the Rady Faculty of Health Sciences at the University of Manitoba. Dr. Udod has a Ph.D. in the Science of Nursing Administration from the University of Toronto. Her teaching expertise includes leadership, management, and advanced qualitative methods. Dr. Udod has an active program of research on the role of the nurse leader and nurses' work environments. Her research focuses on nurse leader development important to the creation of high-quality healthcare workplaces, leading to quality nurse, patient, and organizational outcomes. Now, many of you in the group might be thinking, well, if Dr. Sonia Udod is a nurse with a PhD in nursing, how is this going to help and benefit us here at the UCC? Now, as a researcher, part of the process is applying for funding. Sonia is always applying for funding to receive grants. Sonia and I met in 2010, and since then there have been many times when Dr. Udod and I have been in contact, and she would share. Right now, she's grant writing. And I have heard, Sonia, I've heard you say many times, I'm grant writing for these 3 days, or I'm grant writing for these several weeks. So what better presenter on grant writing than the one who has the experience and expertise? Dr. Udod, today we have 40% of us here do not have any experience with grant writing at all. So we are looking forward to your presentation, and I'm going to pass the baton over to you.
Okay, thank you very much, Lysa. Dobry večer, everybody. I'm very pleased to be here. And I hope that I can share something that is meaningful to you. I've thought about this a lot, and I do have some experience. I don't know it all, but I do have some experience that I do hope can be meaningful to you. So anytime you're ready with the slides, Lysa, that would be great. I now know that there's a good percentage of you that have not had any experience with grant writing, so I will tailor my presentation to that. Please feel welcome to ask me any questions you may have after I'm done. You know, if you haven't done this sort of thing, it can be very overwhelming, but it really is possible. So feel welcome to ask me any questions that you might have. So if we can go to the next slide, perfect. So the objectives for today, I have, and Lysa has sent me the 2-page project detail application and also the budget application. So this short presentation will be how to be successful in doing that. So we'll just go through each of the elements for the 2-page project details, and then talk about a realistic budget, and then go to Q&A. Next slide. So if I've tried to make this presentation look a little bit interesting. So some of the slides are just blank, I should say just text. So you'll have to kind of bear with me. But at the very top of the 2-page application talks about including the organization you're with, the title of the application, So, make the title very, very simple, omit words that you don't use. The other thing I wanted to mention is that there are different ways of writing a grant proposal. So, the way a project application is done is a little bit different than what I'm accustomed to, but I've tried to, merge the two together to make it meaningful to you. So going back to the first point there, make sure that your title is meaningful and short. It doesn't need to be long, and it needs to be practical. So the submission date, the date that you're submitting this application, where the project is going to be located. Is it going to be located in Toronto? Is it going to be located in Regina? Where is it going to be located? That's important. These are very simple points here. The duration of the project, is it going to be a year? Is it going to be 2? Is it going to be 6 months? Just, include that. The 2 pages also talks at the very top about the cost, and we'll come to that later. There is a point about beneficiaries, and that's not a word that we typically use in research, but it's related to how many people will this project benefit. So you can include that, but it's also helpful to think beyond the project and how it can be transferable or perhaps used by another group of people in their region of the country. How many people could this possibly affect beyond the direct population? Also, don't forget to include your name and your contact information. Phone number, email needs to be included because a project application does not have that. Very important to include. There will be many applications coming, and yours would be just one of many. So you want to make sure that people that are reviewing it are not kind of lost in what you have sent to them. Okay, next slide. And this might be one of the most important slides in this presentation. There are some principles that we use in developing a quality project that can be used for really any kind of writing. You want to always identify and meet a need, absolutely critical, and you need to be crystal clear about what you want to do. So I learned from my mentor that you always start with what you want to do, what your outcomes are, and how you plan to do it on one sheet of paper. So that has been extremely important. So make sure that you know what you want to do and that you're clear and that there's a need for that particular project that you envision. You also want to be persuasive that your project is worth being funded. So you want to be truthful, you want to be honest, you want to be realistic, but you want to create a story, in a sense, to your review committee that your project is worthwhile. Okay, very, very important. And then plan before you write. It's really good to have like a template or an outline of what you want to do with the elements that is in this application. So you want to provide a well-articulated understanding of the need for the project and how it could add to or extend what is being done in the broader Ukrainian community. One of the things that I have learned in my work is that you are much better off if what you plan to do kind of builds on what already has been done. So people get a little bit more excited about it because that means that you're obviously paying attention to what's being done. People like that, and that you're building upon it to make it better. Also, be clear and use simple language. Sometimes people think that, and I know I sometimes do this as well, even now, that I have to use really big words to impress the reader of the review committee. And honestly, they have so much to read. They want it to be clear. They want it to make sense. And don't use jargon. Don't use acronyms. Be as clear as you can in what you want to convey to the reader. And I'm in the midst of reviewing grants right now, and it's very, very hard work. And so if I find, for example, I'm reading one particular grant right now that are no paragraphs. And there are very long sentences. It's very annoying because I don't understand the content very well. And if they were in paragraphs, it would be a lot easier and not long sentences. So this seems very simple, but it's a challenge to actually do. So Lassa, we'll move on. These are potential project ideas. You probably have them already, but it was more perhaps for my benefit. But these are some things that you could possibly do, or, you know, think about doing, I guess. So adapting existing programs or services in your neck of the woods, creating new programs or services, also developing partnerships. As you know, partnerships today are absolutely critical to moving our work forward. We don't work in silos anymore. We work with other people, with other organizations. So, for example, some of you may have heard or may not have heard, in Manitoba, as of last week, UCC, the Manitoba provincial branch here, and the Manitoba Métis Federation are working together, in which the Métis Federation has created 25 jobs for our newcomers. So that is an excellent example of two groups coming together to try to support one another. And so that is really excellent for our community, and it's good for the Métis Foundation as well. And then training or support for personnel. This could be another idea. And Lassie and I have spoken a little bit about this already. And, you know, she indicated that there's a lot of volunteers who are doing this kind of work. But there's also a need sometimes for training or supporting personnel, because they're the ones who actually will do the work. Not that volunteers won't, but sometimes we have things come up in our personal life that makes it a little bit more difficult to do. But if somebody's being paid for it, that makes a huge difference. And, you know, the grants that I'm reviewing, the majority of the money goes to pay people to actually do the work so that the researchers can do other things. So those are just some ideas for projects. Okay. The background is the very first big paragraph that you will tackle when you apply for funding. And the small font at the very top there is related to what you will need to follow when you open the application. So for the background, it says, according to CUF, this section should focus mainly on the analysis of assessed needs. The organization can provide a summary of the situation on the ground. The applicant should summarize the findings of credible evidence-based needs assessments in the proposed area of operation. And then it tells you how many words you can include in this section. So I have to say, when I looked at that, that was overwhelming for me. And so I've tried to leave what is in the application there, but to help you perhaps create an idea of how to go forward with what you include in this box. So the very first thing you need to do is include a purpose. There's nothing there saying that you need to include a purpose. Include the purpose. Extremely important. It tells the reader what you're planning to do. So what do you want to achieve in the project? And then as part of the background, you want to explain when this issue started. Was it because there was this Russian invasion into Ukraine? Is this how this whole thing started for your project? What is wrong with the current situation that requires you to do the project? You see a gap. So what do you want to do? So some of this is repetitive, but it's really important to make this all hang together. So perhaps something has been done already that you could build upon, and perhaps not. One of the other things that is helpful when you're doing a background or sort of laying the foundation for your work is to connect it to the organization and what their mission is or their goals. And there are 3 pillars in the UCC. One is growing the community, Ukrainian Canadian identity, and supporting Ukraine. So if you can connect it to one of those 3 pillars, that would be very, very good. So basically in this section, you want to build a case for how your project will improve the situation. Right, and it's linked to the rationale, and the rationale is a little further along, but the background and the rationale work together. Right, outcomes and reporting is next, and the instructions according to the application say that your outcomes and reporting periods in the online application form indicate how they'll be done. Is it a multi-year project? And if so, how many years? So here they're asking for what your outcomes are and timelines. So important here, very, very important to identify your anticipated outcome or deliverable. What will, when they give you this money, what do you hope to actually have happen? You can't predict that it will, but you anticipate that you will have certain outcomes. So what are they? So I'm sharing from my own perspective here what has worked for me. So in one of the more recent studies that I've done, my topic is about nurses and leaders. And so one of my outcomes was learning from nurses how to optimize their work environments that contribute to their mental health and well-being. So through my research and talking to nurses, I hope to learn how to better improve their workplaces or the hospitals that they work so that they have better mental health and well-being. And we know today that there's a shortage out there. So anything that contributes to people feeling better at work is a good thing. So that's the way you convey a positive outcome. Then when you have some deliverables and have something from your project, you might want to consider using a reporting strategy or dissemination. And I don't know enough about, UCC and CUF as to what that really is about, but we now know if you give money to any researcher or anybody, you want to see some sort of outcome. And so one of the ways that we are encouraged to sort of disseminate or share what we've done is we just create a summary. You can create a 1-page summary of what you've done and what the results were. It's just that simple. It can be very, very simple. You can send it to other provincial councils. You can send it to other organizations that you think may benefit from knowing what you have done. You can also have a meeting, share it at a conference or a forum, and share the results with others so that they could perhaps build upon it. Put it in a newsletter, use a blog, that sort of thing. Okay, so it's just sharing that information with other people. And yeah, so then my last point was about outlining partnerships with others. So for example, for myself, I'm well connected with the health regions in Manitoba and the chief nursing officer. So if I want to make sure that my research gets out there, I just connect with them and say, I have this important work that I did about nurses. Can you share this at a meeting, or where might this be appropriate to share? So having somebody in another organization to help you, share that information. All right, next slide. Does anybody have any questions? Am I going too fast, too slow?
No, I think you're doing well.
Okay. So, all right. Okay. All right. Yes, I will be sharing my PowerPoint as well. So in terms of this section as well, like I said, there's a section there about timelines, and there is something there about a reporting period. So I don't know enough about that, but maybe you might want to share in your application that after 6 months or a year, you might have something to share with the funder. whatever that might be, a short little summary of what you've done in a certain period of time. If it's a little longer, you might want to use what I have there with timelines. And this is from a grant that I wrote. And you don't have to be very specific because it's very difficult to be really specific. You have some idea as to when you would have to get, the research up and running. You need to get ethics in May to June and get access to the hospitals. Then you do your interviews and analysis. You pick about 3 to 4 months to do it. And so the reader or the reviewer knows how long it would take and see whether that's a reasonable amount of time to do the work given the money that they are giving you. Right, and then the next slide. And this is just for your information. I don't want it to be overwhelming at all. If you have a project that will go over a few years, you might want to use a similar chart like this, where on the left side, it tells the reader or the reviewer what you will be doing. So for example, I will be recruiting people for interviews, then I schedule them for interviews, then I do the interviews. And so again, it's on the right side, you've got the years and the quarters. You can do it however you want, but at a glance, the reviewer can quickly see, whether you've given yourself enough time to actually do the work. And you can find this online. These are Gantt charts, GHANTT charts that are used a lot when you're doing timelines for research. But don't let that overwhelm you. All right, next slide. So this is there's actually 2 B's in this project application. So this part of B talks about evidence or needs assessment of why this project is required and how it will affect the population. So again, why is this project needed? How does it address an existing need or gap to better support the targeted population or the population you want to have the project be immersed in? So there needs to be a rationale, reason why you're doing that, and you want to be able to use evidence. It says there, evidence. So what you can use different reports by government, by the provincial government, by the federal government, any evidence on the UCC website. There might be some reports there that you might use. That's what we mean by evidence. So not things that you heard at the coffee shop, of course, but things that you have seen written, that is written by a credible organization or a person with expertise. And sometimes, and you don't have to do this, but sometimes they talk about a significance of the project. And so this comes from a grant that I've done, and you can use the wording if you wish. So you can see relevant and important. Okay, so significance of a project means, is it worthy of attention? So how can you convey to the reviewer that your project is worthy of being funded? So I will say this project is relevant and important. So it makes the reviewer go to those words because previous projects are limited in blah, blah, blah. But then my project, the outcomes of my project will improve nurses' work life, their mental health, that ultimately influences nurse retention. And so if you read that, that's really, I think, very compelling, because we all know that the nursing shortage is critical to all of us, okay? Not just to the Ukrainian community, perhaps even, but much more broader than that. So that is an example that, it's up to you. You can consider using as well. So on the ground capacity, this really talks about pre-existing capacity on the ground as well as years of experience in the region. Now, this is a very important slide as well. This talks about resources to get the work done. And resources mean equipment, they mean people, and they mean time. And you need all of that to get the job done and have an outcome. Remember, you wrote outcomes. They want to see outcomes, so you need to have enough resources to make it happen. So, for example, who are the main people that are going to be overseeing the project? And do they have the experience and skills to actually facilitate and get that project done in a timely manner? Are they linked to institutions or organizations that help them complete the project? So, for example, when I send in a grant, I like to say that I'm connected to a research institute in the College of Nursing here that I can go to if I run into problems. They have research expertise, they have they're able to consult with me, they're able to help me with a poster if I want to do a poster for a conference. So they have confidence that I have a backup and that I'm able to get the work done in case I run into a problem. So in terms of capacity, if you think about, things, do you have access in this project to technological communication? Do you know how to use Zoom? Do you know how to use MS Teams? If you run into problems, is there somebody to help you with technical support? Is there equipment? Is there a printer? Is there, those kinds of things? Do you have what you need to actually get the work done? And then this point is really important, I think. And it's up to you, but hiring and training new staff. Now, I know that most of this is probably done by, volunteers. But like I say, perhaps this is an opportunity to help train a newcomer, train a student, get them involved as a way to build capacity. They can learn different kinds of management skills, leadership skills, to help themselves perhaps be more employable in the future, but also to help you in your project. Don't underestimate the importance of having people available who have the skills to help you. Because I would question if somebody sent in a project application and asked for money and really didn't ask for, people to help pay them to actually do some of the work. So something for you to think about as you go forward. Okay, next slide, monitoring and evaluation. So now this slide is really the meat of this application and really should be further up, but I'm following the rubric or the template as it is. So here, the application asks to how will the project be monitored and evaluated? Okay, basically. So here, you want to convey to the reader or to the reviewer, the approach must convince the reader that the activities are appropriate for the purpose. So the purpose and what you're going to be doing to make a difference need to connect. Okay, and so who are you going to be helping? Is this going to be children? Is it going to be youth? Is it going to be seniors? Who are you going to build your project around? In research, we collect data such as questionnaires or interviews. Maybe you won't be doing that, but maybe you might have a survey to send out. So what strategies are you going to be using to acquire information, and who will be doing the work? Okay, so what will you be doing and who will be doing the work? Okay, and maybe you will need to collect information from people. So how are you going to manage that data? How are you going to make sense of it and put it together? And then you might also want to think about if you'll have any barriers to collecting data or the activities. Okay. So for example, let me just share one example with you. When I was doing a study on leaders during COVID and how they were responding to the pandemic, one of the things that I considered that was really important was, they're in COVID, how are you going to connect with them? Will they have time to connect with you? Do they want to connect with you? And so I reached out to the chief nursing officers in the hospitals, and they gave me the go-ahead that I would have the support, that they would be willing to respond to me, and they did. I had no trouble getting people to respond to me. You have to make sure that you make it easy for them, because you need whatever they're able to give you, so you want to make it easy for them. So I use Zoom, because we weren't, of course, seeing each other at that point, but, using Zoom, connecting with them when it works for them, doing what you can within reason to be able to meet their timelines and their schedule. All right. So that is the application itself, the 2-page application. So the next piece of this is the budget, and we all know what a budget is. It's the costs associated with the project. So we'll just go on to the next slide. So in this slide, you will see that it does not look like what you have from CUP. Now, I looked at the budget from CUF, and I didn't understand it. I don't know what kind of sense to make of it. No offense to whoever put it together, but it's obviously quite complex. What you see in front of you is what I use. This is from a grant that I have written. It seems very simple, and it's meant to be simple. This is what we use at the provincial level, and this is what we use at the national level. So any of the gold star, the very best funding agencies in Canada, they use this. Very simple. Nobody's got time to make it complex anymore. When people read it, they want to make sure they get it. So these are the main areas that I'm familiar with. So salaries usually comprise the most of the budget. Supplies and services, meaning things like if you're having a focus group interview, you want to be able maybe to have some juice or coffee or some, I don't know, donuts. That's what we do now. Provide people who are coming in to give you information. You might want to buy some paper, some ink cartridges there, flip charts. Those would be supplies and services. Okay, so you cost them out at Grand and Toy or Staples, and that's how you come up with your amount. Equipment are things like printers, laptops, that sort of thing. Travel, for me, it was only $200. This was during COVID, so things such as traveling to the hospital, perhaps, parking, that would be travel. So other would be things that don't fit anywhere else. So we provide honorariums to our participants. Oh, I think I froze.
Okay, we can hear you, Sonia, so you can just keep going.
You can, okay.
Yeah.
All right, so anything that doesn't fit the other categories goes into other. Dissemination relates to sharing your work. So if you want to create a poster, I don't know, send some hard copies of summaries to some place across Canada, you would need postage stamps, etc. If you're going to a conference and presenting from a project, you would include it in dissemination. The one thing I did not include that does have, that is included in your budget is in-kind contributions. So things that don't have, a cost involved, but an organization is giving you, I don't know, space for free, whatever that is. And there's a number that's attached to the space that you would use for a year or whatever it is. And so that is the budget as I know it to be. So it can be very simple. So we'll go on to the next slide, and I just will share with you what a description looks like. Again, it doesn't need to be this complicated, but you just take each of the headings and speak about each of them. So in my project, I needed a research coordinator, I said what they will be doing, and I said that they need to have a master's degree. And I created a little thing about how much it would cost me and the project. So $29 per hour for a year, whatever it was. And then we see equipment. So a laptop would cost approximately $1,500. So I'm not going to go through all of them, but just so that you have an idea, that's all you need to include. Okay, so that's personnel. That's the salary there, or budget, I'm sorry. And I think that that is it, correct? I think that's the last slide. Yep. And so those are the two elements for applying for a CUF grant, the 2-pager, project details, and the budget. And I hope that I have been able to address each of those points. If you need to contact me, there's my contact information, and I'd be very willing to respond to your questions.
Дякую. I'm just going to go into the chat here. Okay, so does anyone have any questions? You could raise your physical hand. Oh, I have to put my screen back. You could raise your physical hand or your yellow hand, or you're welcome to put a question in the chat. We also have this evening, Sonia Sharon is also with us this evening. She is the Projects and Grants Advisor at CUF. So we could have questions then to give us a wave, Sonia. Hi.
Oh, there you are. Very nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. Thank you for the presentation.
And I think somebody wanted my email address. So it's just, if you see my name on my screen there, just Sonia Udod. So all lowercase, sonia.udod@umanitoba.ca. All lowercase. Right. Yes, thank you. So all lowercase, yeah. I hope that didn't scare people.
We will have the recording of this evening on our Ukrainian Canadian Congress YouTube channel over the next couple of days. And several people have asked if they could have access to your PowerPoint presentation, Sonia. So if it's okay with you, then then I will send that around to all of the people that registered. And I see 4 or 5 people nodding their heads that they would like the, when in the PowerPoint presentation, the italics at the top of each of those pages, that is actually cut and paste from the CUF grant application. So it will be easy for you then to follow when you're writing out the application and then connect it directly to the PowerPoint slide. Sonia did that for efficiency, and that I think will be extremely helpful. I can't see everyone on the screen at the same time, so I'm just going to look. We have a question here in the chat. How long does it take for CUF to make a decision on the application? The Ukrainian Canadian Congress applied for a grant, and it did take several weeks to hear back. Sonia, is that Solomia? Is that pretty much?
Yeah, I can take that question away. So pretty much we do review the applications ongoingly, but we don't make any decisions until the closing period is over, so we can evaluate all of them and prioritize them pretty much. So what it usually takes a couple of weeks after the deadline. I would say about 4 weeks, because we have so many applications and we have to go through, like the committee has to go through so many of them, each like one by one individually.
Okay, dobre, дякую. Any other questions? Was Dr. Sonia's presentation so wonderful and efficient that all of your questions have been answered? We have a question in the chat. What are some example of grants one can apply from CUF?
Is that one's also for me? If we have a couple of different funds, the main fund, obviously the one that probably everybody heard about, where CUF fundraised millions of dollars. This is humanitarian fund that is directed to Ukraine. We do have a settlement fund or displaced persons fund, which is separate from the humanitarian fund, and the funding is allowed to be spent in Canada. And for this money, we usually we ask and we focus on housing, immediate housing, providing the food or immediate support for the displaced people when they come here, so they can get the assistance that they need. Other CUF funds that are available would be aid for artists, something cultural related, education related, but these are separate committees that look through the application. So this will not be the Displaced Persons Committee or Humanitarian Relief Committee. These will be like separate committees that look at them. And the funding is obviously a little smaller than the main humanitarian aid.
Дякую, Sonia. Is your grant application limited to geographically just to Canada?
And if we're talking about displaced Ukrainians, in Canada, we have a separate fund for displaced Ukrainians in Canada. It's just for displaced Ukrainians in Canada. The Humanitarian Relief Fund, we do sponsor Ukrainians in Poland, Moldova, Romania. Currently, we provide food boxes, food hampers for them, and hygiene supplies. So no, depends on the fund. So yes and no.
Okay, дякую. Do you have to be a UCC member to apply for a grant from CUF?
Absolutely not. UCC members are encouraged. Everybody's encouraged, but you don't have to be a UCC member. The only criteria that we really look for is the years. So the organization has to have an experience of at least 3 years on the ground experience.
On the ground experience of 3 years. Okay. There's another question in the chat, and I recall last year CUF gave funding for newcomer children for them to attend Ukrainian summer camps. Will this also be going on this year with CUF?
We were for next year, you mean 2024? Because this round for this year is closed already.
Oh yes, yes. I'm sorry. And the question does say 2024. Yes.
We're not sure about next year, honestly, because it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work.
Okay. So we have a question about sharing the website. So when I send out, I'll be sending out a survey to everyone. It's just a short survey because, as we all know, when you offer something for the community, you want some feedback. If the community, if this evening we met some of the questions that people had, if this evening was helpful, so I'll send out a small survey to everyone that registered, and I can then include a link to the CUF website, as well as include Dr. Sonia's contact information. I think Sonia, when people actually sit down to start composing, that's maybe when they may have more questions about the sitting down to do the actual application. So
yeah, that's when the questions do come. Yeah, that's right.
If I could suggest anything, it would be allow yourself a good number of hours or even a week to sit down and prepare the application. If you're applying for any grant, Don't imagine that you could sit down and complete the application in 1 hour and send it away. Lots of times there may be information that you need to find. You need to contact someone. They're in a different time zone. They're already sleeping. So make sure that you're not sitting down to fill in the application the day before the deadline. Oksana, do you have a question? I saw your hand up.
Yes,
Proszę.
and my question is to CUF Foundation. Do you guys have any grants for Ukrainian schools? Should we try, or we don't even have to try to apply for it?
For schools, if you're talking about bursaries, can you be a little more specific? Is this bursaries you're talking about?
It is Ukrainian Saturday school.
To fund, depends what category. If you're talking about sponsoring children, then this will not fall under humanitarian help, but it can fall under education. So pretty much anything can be CUF related, but it has to go to a specific committee. So education, civil society related arts, we can different committees can still look at them and evaluate. But
Saturday school is related to educational program.
Would go to education, yes, committee.
Because we have a lot of newcomers and our school is kind of private and they don't have enough funds to pay for the children's education, so it will count, right?
As I said, you can still apply. It's not that you will get automatically rejected. I will have to redirect the application because all the application go through me. I'll just redirect them to the appropriate committee, education committee, and they will have to evaluate.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.
Дякую, Oksana. We have 2 questions in the chat, and then Pani Hanya after that. Does CUF post any official reports on the given grants? So, Oya, could you expand on that? Do you mean, do they post a report on the grants that they actually gave?
Right. Yeah, this is what I mean.
Okay. Is there a report, Solomia, who received a grant?
Annual reports or
If
whatever.
someone receives a grant from us?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So
What amount of money you have given and what organization received for what purposes under each vehicle?
We do post, if you subscribe to our social media, we post and we repost different organizations that we support. We do provide our annual reports as well. They're uploaded on our website that you can download. You can see the name of organizations, how much money we've given them. It's all there. We do report, as well as we do report to the CRA. So if you go to the CRA web page, you can also download reports from there.
Дякую. Do you accept applications from organizations only or from individuals as well?
We do accept official organizations. There has not been a case that we've accepted, unfortunately, applications from individuals because it's one of our non-grant criteria. We do not sponsor individuals. It's for the common good, charitable purposes of the common good.
Okay, дякую. Pani Hanyu, you had a question?
Yes, I did. My question is, well, it's actually twofold. Are single institution, single standalone potential projects weighed differently than, say, if you approached a project with partners, whether here or in Ukraine or both, weighed differently? Is there a preference or a weighting given to the type of submitter and who is submitting for that? And then the second part is, okay, so answer the first part.
Sure. So we prefer if an organization applies directly, not through a partner, because it's just easier to work with them directly. Instead of having the the middle person to pass the information, it's just a lot easier and clearer. But if if the organization, let's say we do have an agreement with organization and they do have partner organizations that they work with, we should have the responsibilities listed that they will be responsible for, so we can keep track of what's happening.
Okay. And sort of the second part of that is, and maybe I missed it in the presentation, but do health-oriented projects fall under the humanitarian relief portion, or is there a separate health committee?
We do have a separate health committee. So right now, because if you're talking about, if you mean projects from Ukraine, because everything
I'm talking about potentially funding projects from here in terms of, let's say one was thinking of a rural health, development support project, particularly when one is thinking post, sort of reconstruction after the war is over, in terms of developing these fledgling rural health communities. Does that fall under, the health aspect? There's so much potential on that. I can go on forever, but you don't want to hear it.
No, I absolutely agree. We do have a health committee separate. They kind of right now they do serve as an advisory to the main humanitarian committee, just because everything is so intertwined on the ground in Ukraine with health. So health pretty much falls under the humanitarian right now. And potentially, yes, it can fall under humanitarian, and then it can be assessed as medical and work together. Like these two committees would work together on this question.
Okay,
So
thank you.
Дякую. We have in the chat, thank you, Dr. Sonia Udod, for the detailed presentation, and Cuff for your hard work. Thank you, UCC, for organizing the workshop. Looking forward to having some fantastic workshops. Elvira had to leave. We have one question left. The questions are becoming more detailed, I think, or specifically oriented for a particular thing. So this will be the last question. And when I send the information out, I will make sure, Solomia, it's okay that I include your contact information as well. Okay.
Yeah.
Can a situation like this be considered where there is an individual in the province that has a mental health background from Ukraine, but not certified in Canada? Would it be possible to apply for a grant to cover their certification so this person can assist displaced Ukrainians in the province?
Okay, so this is a great example of what cannot be sponsored, just because does not serve charitable purposes. Like in a long span, it does, because theoretically speaking, potentially the person can help others. However, unfortunately, this is the benefit of one person. It does not serve the purpose of benefiting the community. So CRA would not classify that as a humanitarian help or charitable activities. So unfortunately not.
That's a good question, though, and it's good for everyone, for all of us to understand that there are limits as to what CUF can fund. Страшенно дякую, що всі сьогодні прибули. Thank you very much, Dr. Sonia, for your presentation. We have all kinds of notes coming into the chat here. За чудову презентацію. Дякую, Solomia, for coming in to answer some direct questions. I hope everyone enjoyed it. I look forward to reading your survey results and planning something for UCC in the future. So, дуже дякую всім. До побачення, добраніч.
Thanks, everybody.
Побачення.
Good luck. Bye-bye.